Wearing a mask outside will help protect you from smoke, toxic fumes, and particulate matter. If you don't need to go out, it's best to stay home with the windows closed. Getting to know your neighbors is a great way to stay safe, stay connected, and share resources. And Angelinos are stepping up to help. So reach out and find the assistance you need. Mutual Aid LA Network is constantly updating a Google Sheet with mutual aid resources. You can find it at tiny.cc-malan-fire. The earlier you make a plan, the better off you'll be when every second counts. Planning for LA, preparing, and standing with you. KBLA Talk 1580.
Let me know when you're ready. Yeah. You are listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and White House correspondent. I'm in touch until you be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms. Let's let that ride a little bit. Follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, D-R-N-I-I-Q, and boom, bam, boom. I pop right on up fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. And there we are for your listening pleasure. We are over here grooving to Duke Ellington. You know why? Because in just a little bit, I'm going to be in conversation with Jeffrey C. Stewart. He's a professor of Black Studies at UC Santa Barbara. And he's also the author of a book called The New Negro. It's the life of Alan Locke. And it's one of the few books of history that's won the 2018 National Book Award for nonfiction and the 2019 Pulitzer Prize for biography. This beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book really tells the story of a very important figure that helped to power the Harlem Renaissance. And so that's why we thought playing a little Duke Ellington was very fitting today. It's time for your national news roundup. It's time for the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. Kicking us off, Tabitha Brown. Who doesn't like Tabitha Brown? I love Tabitha Brown. In fact, we can't wait to have Tabitha Brown here on the show. But Greer's reporting that Tabitha Brown says that a Target boycott could hurt Black-owned businesses, but expresses empathy, saying, I 1,000% get it. You see, after Target announced that it's rolling back diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts throughout its brand, leading to calls to boycott the retailer, Black and brown brands and those owned by women have found themselves caught in the middle. On Saturday, Emmy-winning actress and vegan lifestyle guru Tabitha Brown uploaded a video to Instagram urging the public to consider the diverse brands at stake. Along with Brown's various collections, Target's Black-owned brands down the grocery aisle include Black and Gold Coffee, Ghetto Gastro, Partake, Kawa Coffee, A Dozen Cousins, and Janita's Jar. The beauty and hair care department features Bevel. I own some Bevel products, by the way. Also includes the Lip Bar. Proudly Company, Pattern, and Honey Pot. The home and office departments carry Be Rooted and Houston White, and the toy selection carries Afro Unicorn. In her lengthy, nearly 10-minute statement, Brown acknowledged that she did understand that folks were set for the boycott. went on to say, however, I am in business in multiple ways with Target, with Walmart, and Amazon. I sell Donna's Recipe, my hair care products on Amazon and in Target. And of course, I have a huge partnership with Target. I sell my seasonings at Walmart. And she said, what I can tell you is if we all decide to boycott and be like, no, we're not spending no money at these organizations. She says, listen, I get it. And if that's how you feel, she gets it 1000%. But I think she's just trying to say, look, let's be mindful of the impact of our actions, right? Because just as much as you think that you're putting Target in a timeout, you might be a part of the consumer base that ends up keeping these products off the shelf. Because ultimately, if these products continue to sell, whether there's a Target DEI initiative or not, those products are still going to be on the shelf. And so very important considerations there. And there are some people that may say, hey, I'm not going to shop at Target. I may go to Tabitha Brown's website directly and purchase them, right? But let's just be mindful that our Black-owned businesses, our brown businesses, don't get caught in the crossfire. That is the message coming from Tabitha Brown and so many others in short. Moving along, Snoop Dogg defends Trump's inauguration weekend performance, saying, I'm still 100% Black. That's what Snoop Dogg said. The Grill reported that this weekend, Snoop Dogg decided to address the ongoing social media discourse about his decision to perform at the inaugural Crypto Ball on January 17th during President Trump's inauguration weekend. The West Coast rapper took to Instagram Live to explain his stance on this decision, saying, quotes, it's Sunday, man. I got gospel in my heart. For all the hate, I'm going to answer with love. That's what he told viewers during his live stream. As previously reported by the Griot, fans were outraged to hear that the legendary rapper, often referred to as Uncle Snoop, would perform at an event meant to celebrate President Trump's inauguration, considering the ways in which the president's comments and actions have harmed the Black community in the past. Fans were particularly shocked by the rapper's decision because in 2019, he had some choice words for President Trump, choice words that I'm not going to say live here on the air. But that's how serious those words were. Elon Musk noted on X that the vibe shift is real in 2024. During an interview with the Sunday Times, the rapper claimed to have nothing but love and respect for Donald Trump. Trump ain't done nothing wrong to me. This is what Snoop said. He went on to say he's done only great things for me, explaining how the president pardoned Michael Harris, the co-founder of Snoop's first label, Death Row, who was in prison for drug charges. So, was this Snoop simply doing a favor for a favor? Or is Uncle Snoop in a permanent timeout? I'll let you all decide that. Finally, from prison cell to Hollywood stardom, one Oscar nominee's astonishing transformation. I saw the story, had to share it with you. Clarence Macklin. He made history as the first formerly incarcerated person to earn an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. He shares the nomination for Sing Sing with co-writer Clint Bentley, Greg Queter, and John Divine G. Whitfield. The groundbreaking film, produced by A24, has captivated audiences and critics alike with its powerful narrative and a theater program inside a maximum security prison. Now, though Macklin was not nominated for Best Supporting Actor despite earning accolades from the Critics' Choice Awards, the Gotham Awards, and Independent Spirit Awards, he can now proudly add Oscar nominee to his name. This monumental achievement marks a turning point for Hollywood, elevating stories of redemption and proving the power of second chances. And so a little bit of good news for the community of folks who are formerly incarcerated and are doing big things with their second chances. When we come forward, I'll be in conversation with Jeffrey C. Stewart, Professor Stewart, Professor of Black Studies at UC Santa Barbara. He will join us to discuss just the rich Black history of Altadena, having grown up there. We'll also talk a little bit about his career, particularly a big book that he published some years ago about the Dean of the Harlem Renaissance, Alan Locke. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Jeffrey Stewart, when we come forward.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, Jeffrey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Can you hear me good enough?
I can hear you good. We'll be back with you in 2 minutes.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Free legal services for eligible tenants and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face it.
Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. I'm really honored to be in conversation with Jeffrey Stewart. He's a professor of Black Studies at UC Santa Barbara. Has been there since 2007 when he was hired as chair of the Department of Black Studies. And he has a recent book out that if you haven't picked it up, you ought to. You ought to. It's called The New Negro, The Life of Alan Locke. It was published in 2018. It's one of the few books of history that's won the 2018 National Book Award and nonfiction for nonfiction and the 2019 Pulitzer Prize for biography. As a new author, let me just say, Jeffrey Stewart, you are life goals personified. Welcome to the show, Jeffrey
Thank you very
Stewart.
much.
Well,
Thank you. Thank
thank
you.
you for being
We
here.
appreciate you
And
having
I
me
want
on.
to first start off with your origin story. Your origin story is probably more important now than ever to share with the masses, given the devastation that we've seen in Altadena, whole community reduced to ashes. And this for you is not just any old headline. Altadena's home. Tell us about it. Tell us about your origin story.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, I was born in Chicago, and my sister had moved out to LA. She was going to UCLA, and my mother wanted to get me out of Chicago. And so we were planning to come out to Los Angeles. And my sister said, well, you know, with the things that we're dealing with in schools in Chicago, LA might not be as big a change as you would like. But I found this little community up above Pasadena. It's called Altadena. And the thing she described at the time is she says it's roomy. You know, it's not congested. You can have some land around your house. And so it turned out that we were able to purchase a home there. And it was an integrated community, although roughly, I would say 1960, we're probably only about 4% people of color in Altadena, but the various changes were going on in Pasadena. There was redevelopment. People were migrating out of Pasadena and they were going north, as Black people often do. We often go north. And, you know, Altadena is northern part or above Pasadena, sort of like Harlem is above most of the rest of New York. And so we just moved up there, and it was just, it was a wonderful experience. It was an integrated neighborhood, which we had never lived in, or I at least not lived in since I was born in the south side of Chicago. And then over time, it became a substantially Black and brown community. I would say probably about 25% of the population the last couple of years has been in Altadena. It was really interesting for me because I met people from all sorts of backgrounds, Latinos, Asians, white people that I had never really interacted with as a young person, but in a situation where you weren't sort of in a white zone. You know what I mean? You were in a multicultural zone, a tolerant zone. And also the other thing is that people lived near each other and we knew artists. The artist Charles White, for example, who did his marvelous portraits of Black people, had migrated up and lived in Altadena, partly because he had a white wife and really had very difficult time finding places to live in, even in Southern California in the 1960s. But other artists like Yvonne Mayo and you know, people from Hollywood would come up to there, Sidney Poitier and others, and of course the inimicable Octavia Butler, who essentially wrote all of those masterful Afrofuturist novels. In fact, the one that you think of now, Parable of the Soil, which is about devastation and autocratic leadership and a Black woman leading us out of that, that's sort of almost prophetic on her part. She lived there, and people knew each other, knew they were writers, knew they were artists, and so it had a kind of Black cultural feel to it, even though it wasn't an all Black culture or all Black community.
So what was it about Altadena that, you know, gifted us the art of Octavia Butler, for example? And you just mentioned her book, The Parable of the Sower, which has us all run into a bookstore near us to pick up to try and process this moment. But, you know, Altadena has gifted us with artists like yourself, artists like Octavia Butler, so many others. What is it that was so special about Altadena that you can't just recreate, but that was sort of a
Yes.
function of space and time? try help us
Yeah, I
understand
think, yeah.
the the secret sauce that was
Hmm.
Altadena, as we try to ready ourselves for the next iteration of Altadena.
Yes. Well, I think migration, just like with Harlem, Harlem was produced by the migration into Harlem from the South, from Africa, from West Indies, right? I mean, migration, people leaving somewhere and coming to a place, they bring those influences with them, and it kind of comes into a kind of crucible, and it gets mixed up together, and something new comes out of it. There was migration into Altadena, as I said, in the early 1960s, where there was redevelopment going on in Pasadena, was essentially pushing people out. We all know how the redevelopment is always portrayed by urban renewal people as progressive, but it also means going into poor Black communities and pushing people out. And people was relatively open in the same way that Harlem was kind of open, right? You know, there wasn't, people didn't have any rules. And so I think that was one of the things. Also, too, you could have a sort of semi-rural lifestyle up there. In other words, the place where I lived at the corner of Loma Alta and Cheney Trail, up above that, a woman had a horse ranch where she trained and, you know, taught people how to ride horses. Many people had a lot of land, so they had chickens and pigs. And so for Black folk, I think it was allowing you to kind of maybe keep alive some of those Southern traditions at the same time that you were in a, you know, a relatively not too, you know, a northern type Western community. Plus, I think the housing was affordable. It was more affordable in Altadena than in Pasadena, even in South Pasadena, and certainly San Marino, which is, of course, one of the most expensive places in the country. And it was permissible. There was there was still police presence because, you know, Altadena is in, San Gabriel County. So you had the San Gabriel County sheriffs who, you know, would stop you and see if you had marijuana when you didn't have it and all of that. But it was unincorporated, so it wasn't as uptight as Pasadena. And you felt freer up there. And of course, if you wanted to have some culture, you could go down into Pasadena. You could go to the Norton Simon Museum, or you go to the Pasadena Playhouse and see, you know, important plays. The Ice House, where, you know, a lot of folk artists like Joan Baez and others would come through. So I think you had your own enclave, but you were also close enough to civilization and culture that you could dip in and out as you wanted to. And you had that mixed rural urban thing where people were living together. You go over to somebody's house, it's not that far. You had almost a kind of fission between different households. A lot of people migrated from Chicago, people migrated from the South. So the migration into there created a feel, a kind of tolerance for creativity. Of course, it also had significant a gay community, had mixed race community, and people more or less didn't react to that as strange, right? And so I think that sense of diversity, which seems to be so threatening to the country at large, essentially was allowed to develop in a harmonious way. Wasn't say there wasn't in conflicts, but it wasn't like you were at each other's throat. You know, you were essentially growing together. So I think that is its legacy. That a lot of people, transgenerational people had homes and they were giving them on to their descendants. And I think that's the thing that's threatened now. Like the next generation, or is it going to be a loss of housing? And one of the things I'm trying to do with some friends of mine is to try to sort of intervene or be part of the recreation of Altadena, and to say that the Black presence, the Black notion of an Afro future, for example, should be part, you know, with homage to Octavia Butler, to the new Altadena, that the Black presence, the Black cultural presence should be taken into account, even in terms of the design of homes. The kind of co-housing existed in Altadena. I'd like to see that continue so that people are within relative distance of one another and they can feel a sense of community, which is something that, is not always the case when you have places redeveloped.
When we come forward, I'm looking forward to connecting the dots between your origin story in Altadena, and really appreciate you sort of laying that out for us, helping us to understand what made Altadena so special. The big lots of land and the ability to keep alive some of our Southern traditions, the affordable housing piece, the fact that mixed race people and gay people, could exist in harmony and in safety. And I'm picking up what you're putting down in terms of your attitude of building building back up Altadena with an Afrofuture lens. We're gonna dive into that and also connect the dots between your growing up in Altadena and your having written this phenomenal book about the dean of the Harlem Renaissance, Alan Locke. I see some similarities, but I want to hear from you. More with Jeffrey Stewart when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Enlightened and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice.
Yes.
Can you turn your camera so that it's horizontal and not vertical?
Okay, so like this?
Yeah.
Is that better?
It should be. I'm just waiting for it. Well, no, that's not good. I was just trying to get you width-wise.
Yeah, unfortunately, my computer crashed, and so I'm doing this on my phone, unfortunately.
Okay. Maybe try flipping it horizontal the other way.
Okay.
Rutgers University is drawing criticism at great camp for the conference university equity inclusion that had been scheduled to take place.
I think that may be better. I think that may be better. Yes. All right, we'll be with you in 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Today, they made a 3-team trade with the Las Vegas Aces and the Dallas Storm that gave them all-star Kelsey Plum. She helped lead Las Vegas to 2 WNBA titles. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and as a new author, it's always a pleasure to be in conversation with an OG, Jeffrey Stewart. He's author of The New Negro, The Life of Alan Locke. Let me just say that this book is it's a piece of work amongst pieces of work, amongst masterpieces, really. The New Negro, according to the New York Times, is a master class in how to trace the lineage of a biographical subject's ideas and predilections. The attachment and longing that Locke experienced in relationship with his mother, his friends, and lovers exerted as much influence on his work as the text he read and the lectures he attended. One finishes Stewart's book haunted by the realization that this must be true for all of us. Wowie kazowie. That's what the New York Times said about your book, Mr. Stewart.
Yes, well, very flattering. Yes, well, it meant a lot because I spent a lot of time on it. And I did believe that the life that people live has a huge impact on the work that they write and the relationships that they do, but particularly the ability to push our culture forward. That's, I think, what Alan Locke did always, over and over again, despite all the conflicts and difficulties. He was always pushing Black culture forward and believed that it was part of modernity. It was part of what a modern America could be. And I think we're kind of living in the world that he imagined, albeit I'm sure he hoped that we weren't as rife with racism and backward thinking as we are today.
So, Jeffrey, tell us how you connected the dots between your origin story and Alan Locke's sort of self-examination. The New Negro wouldn't have been
Yes.
possible if Alan Locke hadn't engaged in or had the courage to engage in that self-reflection. And I would imagine that as you think about, life in Altadena, for example, that self-reflection has guided you along your career.
Yes. Well, I love being in Altadena. I went to UCLA undergrad and then UC Santa Cruz, and then was fortunate enough to get admitted to Yale in graduate school. And I'd already studied Black culture and wanted to do something about Black life, but I didn't really have a subject. So when you go to graduate school, you often have a lot of ideas, but no focal point. And then it was really my professor, John Blassingame, who was a graduate of Howard University and also Yale, who introduced me to Alan Locke. And he knew I was a philosophy undergraduate. You're talking about self-reflection. That was my undergraduate major. I think I got that from my mother, who was also always a very philosophical person. And so he said, you know philosophy, you can handle Locke, So I didn't realize what I was going to really have to handle, which was an incredibly reflective, but also challenged individual because of the times in which he lived and the difficulty of wrestling with the fact that he was Black, that he was gay, that he was incredibly short, that he was a brilliant person, but also disliked for his brilliance. And how do you take that and make a contribution to a culture that perhaps doesn't even want your contribution? And so I kind of wrestled with that in graduate school. I got out of graduate school. I taught for many years. I sort of put the book aside and did some other things. I was a museum curator at the Smithsonian for a while. But I kept coming back to Locke and kept coming back to the idea of, how is it that we can have a central concept to him as cultural pluralism? How can we deal with the reality that we live in a world with people with different perspectives than ours? And that was something that I had learned in Altadena.
See, there we go. There's Altadena, really, continuing to teach us so much. Even though those physical structures are no longer, many of them are no longer, but Altadena is still speaking to us. It's still speaking to us, and so is Alan Locke. Are we experiencing our own sort of renaissance? I mean, Alan Locke, was known as sort of the dean of the Harlem Renaissance. We are surrounded, or at least we think we are surrounded by more art than ever, thanks to the internet and digital media. There seems to be a lot more content creators, which some might say creates their own class, a whole nother class of artists. What's your take on whether or not we are experiencing a renaissance of sorts right now, or is it the illusion of a renaissance?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that one way of looking at it is that many people who talk about the Harlem Renaissance usually want to put what I would call a somewhat artificial end date. Many people say, for example, it was in the 1920s, there was a lot of money that whites were throwing around and that supported artists like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and Nella Larson. But then when the Great Depression came, all that went away. This is the title of a book by David Lewis called When Harlem Was in Vogue. And when it wasn't in vogue anymore, then the Renaissance went away. But if you look at the Renaissances that Locke used as his measure the Italian Renaissance, for example, Italian Renaissance is at least a century and a half long. Okay, and so it may be the fact that, in fact, it didn't actually start with the stock market crash. Some of the best books, like Zora Neale Hurston's "Their Eyes Was Watching God," was published in 1937, right? You could even add Richard Wright's book "Native Son," published in 1940, or someone like Ralph Ellison's book "Invisible Man," published, I think, it's 1952. There's been this continual production of literary, artistic, musical brilliance. I would say that right now we're in what might be called a performing arts renaissance, the performing arts part of that renaissance, where you have people like Beyonce, for example, who's actually looking back to the Harlem Renaissance in her last recent tour, right, called the Renaissance Tour, and bringing that back up to us to say, no, this is still alive. And particularly now, where the earlier Renaissance was focused a lot on men, the Renaissance now is really a kind of Black women's Renaissance, I would argue. And that's why Octavia Butler is so important as well.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Connecting the dots between from Alan Locke, the dean of the Harlem Renaissance, to Beyonce, the queen bee, just coming off of her Renaissance tour, rumored to be going on some sort of Cowboy Carter something. We don't know if it's a tour or residency or something, but Jeffrey,
yeah, I don't know if Locke. I don't know if Locke predicted that, but whatever's working for you, I guess, huh?
That's right. That's right. But I have a feeling that if Alan Locke were alive during that Beyonce Renaissance tour, that Alan might be right there wearing the silver, supporting the queen bee. Before we let you go, Jeffrey, I've got to ask you this question about the sort of masculinity.
Yes.
You focus on this figure, this dean of the Harlem Renaissance, that in so many ways was ahead of his time, in so many ways was transcendent. Cut to today, where there's lots of talk of the role that masculinity played in the most recent 2024 election. Some people say the role of toxic masculinity. What can Alan Locke, what can the Harlem Renaissance teach us as men, particularly Black men, about engaging in a more healthy, transcendent masculinity?
Yes, and toward a more perfect union, which is what you're talking about with the title of your show. I mean,
That's
I
right.
have to say that as a caveat here, Alan Locke was a famous misogynist. Okay, I mean, he promoted mostly men during the Harlem Renaissance. He was a queer Black male, and he favored people like Countee Cullen and Langston Hughes and Richard Wright and others. And at the same time, he did push forward and celebrate Zora Neale Hurston, who was in some ways one of the more radical, difficult people of the Harlem Renaissance. So he appreciated genius, even if it wasn't the exact gender that he was looking for, right? And so I think that's something that we have to come to grips with, is that genius is distributed throughout our culture in different ways. And part of our learning, part of our growing, is to appreciate genius when it comes to us in a way that we didn't predict it would be. And I believe, as I said, that particularly in the 1970s, you see the flourishing of so many great writers. When you think about, Maya Angelou or June Jordan, or the Nikki Giovanni, who just passed away. I mean, these people are geniuses of poetry in a way that I think Locke would appreciate. And even when you think about our recent artists, they are really, the Black women are in a very important role. It is a higher level of masculinity, it seems to me, to be able to appreciate strong women and enable and support them without feeling threatened. And I think that perhaps is the struggle the culture is having right now, that you can have peer culture, you can have strong men and women working together instead of sort of the typical thing where, well, the man has to be first and he has to be leader. And this goes back to my own upbringing. I mean, my mother was definitely the leader in our I mean, she was the business person. My father had a business, but she was the one who really reorganized it. And I think that our ability to not accept the gifts that God in our life presents to us with women is one of the problems of our toxic masculinity today.
We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to Jeffrey C. Stewart, professor of Black Studies at UC Santa Barbara, also the author of a book that you have to have on your bookshelves. It is called The New Negro, The Life of Alan Locke. It was published back in 2018. Look, you know, I'm running, not walking to go get it. And so that means y'all got to run and walk with me. Mr. Stewart, I hope we have a chance to have you back on again soon. I feel like I could talk to you for a whole nother hour.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, the quiet part out loud when we come forward. Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you.
Okay, appreciate you. Best of luck with your show.
You too. You too. We're going to definitely have you back.
Okay. All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye. To improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is the community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, educated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha, Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life 30. All right, thank you. But they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their program. Your donation will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. So just a few announcements, very important announcements, particularly for our leaders, learners, and listeners in Los Angeles, where the mayor's office is reporting that there are a number of people. They've announced that more than 4,000 households have been served by one-stop disaster recovery center so far. Mayor Karen Bass said that the one-stop official disaster recovery center for those affected by the Palisades fire has served 4,000 households so far. She also continued to urge Palisades residents, businesses, workers in need to visit the center and utilize on-site resources. The official disaster recovery center is open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. On-site resources include financial relief, debris removal and rebuilding, health, business, employee lost documents, and other critical services through a coordinated effort from 70 city, county, state, and federal agencies on site. That location is 10850 Pico Boulevard here in Los Angeles. That's on Westwood and Pico at the UCLA Research Park, formerly known as the West Side Pavilion. And so make a note of it. And if you don't need this information, you can pass it along to someone else. And speaking of passing along information, you might remember maybe about a week ago, I had my colleague Dominique DePrima, host of First Things First here on KBLA. I had Dominique on to talk about a live broadcast that she did for KBLA in Altadena. And I was listening to that live broadcast while I was in Washington, D.C., and she was in conversation with another one of our colleagues, Zoe Williams. Zoe Williams' family has deep roots in Altadena, deep roots. His family has, lost several homes in the Altadena area. And one of his brothers was lost and was recently found. And so, praise God for that. But Anthony Williams, another brother of Zoe's, is still missing. He was last seen in Altadena. And so if you know anything about the whereabouts of Anthony Williams, you can call us here at the station at 1-800-920-1580. That's 1-800-920-1580. You can also get into Zoe Williams' DMs on Instagram if there's any information you have related to his brother Anthony Williams, who we are still on the lookout for. We're still searching for. And so, look, it's on all of us to do our part. We're in this together. I think you can get to the other side of any situation in community. And so, just passing along this information, you never know who might hear it, who might receive it, and have something valuable to say as the Williams family is looking for their loved one, Anthony Williams. So any information, you can call the station or you can get in Zoe's DMs with that information. We're talking a lot about Alan Locke, who was known as the Dean of the Harlem Renaissance for most of this hour. But speaking of Harlem, our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Barry Michael Cooper. He's the writer of the Harlem trilogy, New Jack City, Sugar Hill, and Above the Rim. He's passed away at the age of 66. There's no discussion of the 1990s era Black movies without films written by Barry Michael Cooper, the Harlem, New York born and raised journalist turned screenwriter who penned New Jack City, Sugar Hill, and Above the Rim. Cooper, who moved to Baltimore in the mid-1980s, passed away January 21st of this year. In Black pop culture circles, Cooper, He was known for having coined the phrases New Jack Swing in a 1988 profile for the Village Voice on Teddy Riley. And the sound would come to define that of urban music in the late 80s and early 90s. Riley's sound would lead to hit records and albums from artists like Keith Sweat, Bobby Brown, Heavy D, and producers of the era like the legends Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. But it was Cooper's reporting on the crack epidemic that would give way to a screenwriting career. In 1986, Cooper wrote one of the first national magazine stories on the crack epidemic for Spin magazine. His 1989 investigative reporting for the Village Voice, Kids Killing Kids, New Jack City Eats Its Young, that focused on the drug trade in Detroit, led to his opportunities to write a film, which would become New Jack City, the 1991 film that tells the story of the fictional drug kingpin Nino Brown and the Cash Money Brothers. It would be Wesley Snipes' breakout performance. And so, see how we tie it all together? It all comes together. Harlem Renaissance, New Jack City, Altadena. It all comes together indeed. We're going to have to leave it there. My thanks to the entire village helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer extraordinaire, Andy, our show producers, Faraji and Kim, and of course, all of you, our leaders, learners, and listeners. Remember, don't panic. Organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and you've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Tech stocks are plunging on Wall Street, concerns over the Chinese startup Nii-Quartelai sell-off of shares of Nvidia.
In the country, the Trump administration has launched a social media thread showcasing what it calls the worst criminals arrested by immigration and customs enforcement. The NFL's biggest game of the season features a pair of familiar faces. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles will be looking for revenge against quarterback Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in a Super Bowl 57 rematch. I'm Tyreek Wynn on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
Cerritos, it's a crash on the 605 northbound past